Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Mess. So, I got a fun and exciting episode for you guys today because I'm taking a look at the new release of SkyEmu version 4 at this point in time. It's going to cover Game Boy and Game Boy Color as well as Game Boy Advance and in beta the Nintendo DS as well. This is an emulator that's been out there for a minute, but the other versions I've used I wasn't in love with, so I figured I'd wait to make a video until it kind of progressed a little bit further. But version 4 definitely is doing an amazing job of emulating all of these platforms, and even though it's not complete, it could be a good choice for you when it comes to emulating Nintendo handhelds. Before you get too far involved though, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, I got a Patreon link down below as well. But SkyEmu is definitely improving, and if you want to grab it today, I will leave a link in the description below to the GitHub. But you'll see here's both for Game Boy and Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, and DS. Now it definitely is experimental for DS, but in my experience using it, I really wasn't able to find any issues in the games I tried to play. Now the DS is a massive library, so it's not like I can test absolutely everything, but if we take a look at the features here, you're going to see it has a ton of different options for it. A lot of things that are going to make a lot of people happy, but I'd say the number one, because I always get asked questions like this, is the cross-platform ability to run it. You're going to get Windows, Mac OS, Linux, FreeBSD, iOS, Android, and you can even run this in a web browser if you so feel like doing it. Your performance would definitely be a little bit worse there. But I get so many questions about Android usage as far as emulators are concerned. So leave me a comment down below and tell me, do you want to see some Android emulation videos on the channel? Because I can always pick up an Android emulation box. Not really something I generally use because I've got a ton of different devices at the house. But if it's something that the audience wants to see, I'll at least try one and see how they go. But you'll see here in DS, you're also getting a very good look, a very good image. And this emulator is going to have a ton of different options for all of the platforms, which I'm going to go over in brief in just a moment. But if you want a tutorial on this one as well, tell me down below and maybe I'll make you guys one. So if we go back into the Game Boy Advance, I'm going to go through these options first, and this is what it's going to look like by default with that screen filter on. But if you click the menu button, you're going to get a ton of different features, including retro achievements, because I know you guys really love those. For me personally, it's not anything I use, but I'm glad they are there. And this is a very comprehensive menu. You can articulate the image, you have save game slots. But if we go to display settings, you'll see by default it's LCD and subpixels. I usually just go to the straight pixelation, but you can kind of pick whatever it is you want in here. You'll see we have so many different options. You're going to have screen rotation, color correction, everything is going to be available to you, even smoothing, which I don't think anyone's going to use. No judgments, but a lot of judgments if you actually do that. You can also turn screen ghosting on or off. You have integer scaling as well, so you get a constrained XY axis to make sure it matches the overall aspect ratio of the original hardware, and you can even show or get rid of the screen bezel. The nice thing is you just get an absolute ton of different options here, and even though we don't really have a DS game running, you also have touch control settings, and then the ability to fully rebind every single key in the emulator. As far as this one is concerned, it gives you a ton of options to granularly just basically make whatever experience you want to. If you want to change up the controls, you can totally do that. You can bind a controller. I'm using an Xbox Series X one here, and you can use an arcade stick. You can use the keyboard, whatever you want. Of course, this is predicated on Windows, that is what I'm using here, but it's going to be basically the same across almost all platforms unless you go to a phone where it's going to be touchscreen. But I would say the performance here, at least in games I'm familiar with, has been spectacular. Playing Castlevania just feels like playing Castlevania, no issues whatsoever. The controls are snappy and responsive because this is just Game Boy Advance emulation. You don't really need to bring a very high-spec PC to the party. Let's go ahead and do our first soundtrack sample, get an idea of how the sound is, and I'll be right back with more. I mean, honestly, it sounds good to my ear, but you leave me a comment down below and you tell me what you think the sound is doing as far as the emulation is concerned. But let's stick with Game Boy Advance, because that is where I think the sweet spot for this emulator is. Sure, Game Boy and Game Boy Color work incredibly well, it's just not really a platform that I always gravitate towards. I never had a Game Boy or Game Boy Color when I was growing up. My first handheld system outside of being a Game Gear was the Game Boy Advance, so it really is where my nostalgia lies. And I would say one of the #1 things I'm seeing here, and you would expect out of good emulation, is the color accuracy and reproducibility reproduction is exactly what you would think it to be. Something like Wario here, all those purples, the reds, those light greens, all the colorways you're seeing in the image look exactly like I'd expect them to look if you were using real hardware with a nice screen mod if you're on Mr. FPGA. So definitely I would say, as far as the artwork reproduction, the graphics, I haven't seen any glitches or bugs in any of the games I've played. Now again, I can't stress enough, my tests are not comprehensive tests. There are thousands of games out there, so there probably is still something that has a bug here or there, maybe freezes, maybe crashes, because really there isn't a single emulator on the market that runs 100% of games 100% perfectly 100% of the time. Because unless I'm forgetting something, I don't think there's ever been an emulator in development that was completed where the developers said that it is absolutely perfect. A lot of emulators stopped development because people stopped wanting to work on them, but I really can't think of anything that would just claim to be 100% accurate for every single game in the retail library. But if I am forgetting that, leave me that comment down below. But as you see me just playing Wario here, honestly, you wouldn't really know this was in active development because it is just playing the game. And that's kind of the goal for any sort of software emulation. You want to stop thinking about the fact that you're not playing real hardware and just realize that you're having fun sitting there with your controller in your hand, not really thinking about anything else other than the gameplay at hand. And that is what SkyEmu is currently doing, at least in the games I have tested here. I stopped thinking about the fact that this is an in-development emulator, and I just start thinking about the fact that I absolutely love Wario on the Game Boy Advance, and it is one of those games that I end up replaying maybe once or twice every 5 years or so. But leave me a comment down below and you tell me what your favorite Game Boy Advance is as well. I would be curious. But we've talked enough about GBA. Let's move back over the Nintendo DS and take a look at how you can kind of configure all of the screen spaces, because don't forget it is dual screen. I'm sure nobody forgot that, but it's one of those things you have to kind of deal with this differently. So by default, you're going to see that SkyEmu opens up in this manner. You're going to have two screens, one being primary and larger and one being secondary and smaller. Like any good Nintendo DS emulation platform, you're going to be able to articulate that screen however you want, and that's definitely going to be game to game dependent. Some stuff like Sonic, where I showed you earlier, you have to have it vertical because you're going to go up and down, falling through the screen and rising up for the gameplay. For something like 999, you can do whatever you want as far as the screen layout is concerned, although I still kind of really prefer vertical for all of these things. And if you've never played the Zero Escape series before, I can't stress enough, it's absolutely legit one of my favorite visual novels of all time. A lot of fun puzzles to solve, a lot of fun murder mysteries going on. It's just one of those titles I definitely think you should check out. But you can see here you have a ton of different options as to how you want to actually place the screen. Like I said, for me, just the vertical orientation works. But leave me a comment and you tell me, when you are emulating DS, what is the configuration you guys like to do, because it really is a personal choice. Sometimes you don't even really need the bottom screen and you can just maximize the top screen and play off that. In other games, you absolutely have to have two screens running at once. Like 999 here, you need the information and the visuals, but other games, you basically can just ignore that bottom screen. But going back to GBA, again, this is the sweet spot here, because DS is still in beta, so don't expect every single game to work and be glitch free. I wouldn't want you to get into a 20, 30, 40 hour RPG and find out at hour 20 or 25 that there's a glitch or a freeze that keeps you from finishing it. We're going to go into the second soundtrack sample. Here is Old Pervy Toad decides to try to get an eye full of Mario while he's in a shower, because I really do think that SkyEmu is doing a great job with the music. So 45 seconds and I'll be right back with just a little bit more. I mean, it sounds accurate to my ear, and it definitely has that little bit of crunchiness and muffled audio that the Game Boy Advance was famous for, because honestly, as good of a platform as it is for 2D elements, it definitely never had the strongest sound output. Even if you have a modified console using emulation, the sound was always just a little bit crunchy. So if you want to check this one out, again, I left a link in the description below down to GitHub. You can go over to the releases tab and you'll see, as of the recording of this video, this release is 4 days old. You're going to see Android, FreeBSD, iOS, Linux, Mac OS, as well as Windows. So you can kind of pick and choose whatever platforms you want. And I'll definitely be keeping track of this emulation in the future, because I love running updates on these things, and this one definitely shows a lot of promise. I really like the fact that it's basically having every single Nintendo handheld system in it outside of Switch, because obviously that's a big thing and not part of this, but it definitely is promising and we'll definitely check it out in the future. And if you have played around with SkyEmu before, leave me your thoughts down below. But we're done. Hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.